buddy, where is soon?
I am pulling into the driveway right now.
Oh,
soon.
That is soon. All right. Well, I'll keep talking to you as you exit your vehicle and walk towards the door. I mean, this is not standard procedure in this by any means, but let's roll with it.
All right, I'll be up there in a little bit.
Okay. Keep talking to me. Where are you at? Have you gotten out of the car yet?
Yes, I just got out.
Okay.
Jake.
And you're walking towards the door.
Yes, I am currently walking towards the door.
Okay. Hey, this is fantastic. Make sure that you go up the talent side of the stairwell. Okay. That's left side. I mean, you know this, but I just want to make sure we don't let anyone else desecrate that side.
Did Gideon walk up the left side?
He walked up to the right and then he followed me down and walked up to the left again. So I think he's okay.
Good man.
I think you paid.
Good man.
You did it.
All right, I am walking up the stairs
I
right now.
hear
You
him.
probably hear my voice.
I'm getting a double feedback. Yeah, this is good. I'll wait until you're in the doorway and then I'll try to hang up.
And then you're going to hang up?
Yes. Oh, there he is.
All right. Apparently, we're live.
All right, welcome to the In the Garden podcast. I'm Gideon Marlatt. I'm here with Jake Hughes again, and our special guest today is Ian McMillen. Or if for anyone out there who wants to really get personal with him, make me in.
You know, that is not an open invite for anybody who wants to call me.
It's only my name for him. It's only my name for him.
It throws me off every time you say it. It's just like, oh, that's really weird.
You know, if you're opening that invite up to everybody, I'm just going to open up the invite to call you Garlatt.
Okay, well, it was going to happen one way or another.
What would mine would be Jews.
Let's not.
Yeah, so let's drop that trend right now. You like it?
I like it, yeah.
Okay, well then.
Jews.
We'll call each other Garlatt Jews. This is In the Garden with Garlatt and Jews.
Oh, my word.
Well, Well, Ian, thank you for coming on the podcast with us. You are not an herb garden member. But this is not. Yeah, this is the first time that we've had someone outside of our house on the podcast.
We have really moved up in life.
What does that say?
This says we automatically get another 100,000 followers.
Okay,
yeah.
Right. Wonderful.
Right.
Well, thank
Obviously.
you.
Yeah, you're not new to the world of podcasting, right?
No, I'm not.
No. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in that?
In podcasting specifically? I mean, like I've been on a podcast.
You're a content creator. You're a content creator. Right?
I am, yeah. Do you just want to, are you asking who I am?
Yeah, who are you?
Great. Well,
who the heck are you, McMahon?
Someone just showed up and gotten behind a mic, and we were just like, this is on the fly. Who are you?
Well,
you just sat down.
Yeah, I did.
What the heck are you?
Yeah, well, my name is Ian McMillen. I am a filmmaker and animator. I work at Canon Press.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm from Southern California.
Royalties. Canon. Royalties.
We'll be expecting the check in the mail.
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California. I was saved 3 years ago in a big, large megachurch that was doctrinally questionable, and then I reformed shortly thereafter, and now I'm in Moscow, Idaho. So
okay,
that's a brief overview. But
what brought you to Moscow? Was it the college, or was it?
I'm here for kind of both actually. I down in California, my senior year of high school, I worked for the Babylon Bee. And yeah, and
wait, what?
We love those guys.
Legit?
Yeah.
No, I guess I didn't know this. McMahon, you worked for Babylon Bee?
Yes, I did animation for them.
Dylan himself?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How'd you get hooked up with that?
It's a funny story actually. They on their podcast they were just talking about wanting to start an animation department, and they kind of just put a general call out. And so I literally emailed their support email and was like, I can draw. And
Stickman hold stick. Wow. Stickman hit people with stick.
Exactly. So yeah, I just emailed them. They liked my stuff apparently, and offered me a position up there. So
that's cool.
Because the California lockdowns are super terrible. School was closed, and all I needed to do to get an A in high school was show up to the Zoom call. So,
fantastic.
I'm doing homework right now.
Education seems really spot on over there.
Exactly. And so I would just drive up to LA area with my Zoom call on, and I would be in a car while everybody else was So yeah, I was able to work my senior year.
Wow.
Okay.
McMahon, I don't real quick. I don't know. I need to see some of this portfolio stuff because that is, I don't know how much I would trust the word of a satire group to say that, hey, You do some great stuff.
Hey,
and we mean it.
yeah. At the time, Ethan Nicole was the head of creative there.
Yeah, love that guy.
Yeah, he's wonderful. Have you met?
I haven't met him, but I know a lot of his stuff.
I had his kids over to his birthday party last
I know a lot
week.
of his stuff. He's a great guy.
Yeah, wonderful. He's
I
done a lot of TV
I saw
stuff.
him at like a conference once, but I never fully met him.
Yeah, he's a Daily Wire now. So
Really?
yeah, exactly.
Hey.
Wow.
Oh.
Well, that's awesome.
Thanks,
yeah.
man.
So what?
We have connections now. We can have him on the show. This is
wow.
amazing.
Okay, we are just.
Well, I'm not promising
trucking
that.
McMillen's like, no, I'm gonna get sued straight off. Anyway.
Yeah.
So what? Yeah. What really?
Carter, just kidding.
Yeah.
I love you.
To say to?
Sorry, I was
Moscow,
talking about
yeah.
how I came to Moscow. We talked. Hey, Babylon.
Back on it,
Yeah, we had Pastor Doug on the podcast right after the arrests happened at the Psalm Sing.
Oh,
Right.
wow, okay.
To interview him kind of about just that and COVID lockdowns and all these sorts of things and just some of his more controversial things that he's known for.
Is he
There's a lot.
controversial? Is that a thing with him?
Pastor
I
Doug?
don't know. There's just so
Nah.
much of it that it's all the same.
I've lived here for 15 years, and I.
Yeah, so we had him on the podcast, and that was kind of my first exposure to Moscow. And he talked about the college and just everything that was kind of going on up here. At the time, I kind of thought it was kind of like a weird compound kind of thing. Like,
Okay.
Like
down
a
in
Christian
near Utah.
Well, yeah, and like I at the time was in this megachurch still, like very new to kind of the reformative world, and I was like, like Christian education. What's
Sure.
that about? And so yeah, just through researching that, the Lord kind of flipped all of my plans and brought me here. So yeah,
Glory.
That's awesome.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah. So okay, you're making a documentary
Mhm.
movie. Jake, can I say that? It's still within the
I
genre.
feel like there's a difference between the two that
There-
you're just.
there is.
It's just
There is.
There is
Okay,
a
I have confirmation.
Yeah.
I thought this
But-
was like Genius Family, Genius Species sort of deal. Like
yeah.
Movie was
fair.
the-
It's the overarching
Potato.
Canada.
You know.
okay, all right. Anyway, we're gonna stick so that we don't break out into this major argument about what defines a documentary.
Wonderful.
So this documentary is about aesthetics. And that's
Aesthetics, yes.
you've been working on this for how long?
I started my research and everything last summer.
Okay.
With kind of a long history of interest in the subject before that, but formal research started last summer.
Nice.
Okay.
And what pulled you to aesthetics?
Yeah. So I think whenever I kind of bring this up or talk about aesthetic philosophy, right, or our artistic criticism, everybody's minds kind of immediately goes to like, oh, ooh, that's a pretentious art world.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's precisely kind of the thing I wanted to combat. At the very basic level, art and aesthetics is all about kind of just the study of beauty, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's no secret that the art world right now is absolutely ridiculous. I think an example that is oft cited is the banana taped to a wall kind of that sold for millions of
Beautiful.
dollars.
Very aesthetic.
Beautiful.
Exactly. And so that's kind of the state of art world right now. It's like anything I like, anything that I want to do can be considered art, the avant-garde weirdness of the whole thing.
Right.
And so, I saw that and, these kind of trends of weirdness started to trickle down into a lot of, very, very practical things like music and movies. And I think that particularly is what piqued my interest in the whole subject to begin with. And so first and foremost, I would want to really qualify that the study of aesthetics, I think, is a really practical and important area of study for any Christian and anybody generally.
But
Of course.
Ian, it's
Go ahead.
philosophy. It's
Right.
dry. Why?
It's why is aesthetics important? Well, it becomes immensely practical, like I said, when you think about kind of your everyday media that you're consuming. When it comes to the movies you watch, the music you listen to, the paintings you look at, the architecture that you build, right? All of these things ought to be informed by something, and they are informed by something. And if that's not principles garnered from the scriptures, then that is going to be really bad.
Sure.
Amen. But generally, yeah, in aesthetics, there's no neutrality, just as with everything else. You know, what you create speaks, and it either speaks goodness and truth and beauty about our creator, or it tells a lie about the world. And so that principle applied to music and movies and all these sorts of things is really important for, you know, your own sanctification and the things that you delight in, right? So like if you like a certain music, a certain genre of music or a certain genre of movie, there's a lot of practical questions that you should be asking, right? And a good introduction to this whole thing is, I like to use the horror movie genre as an example just to kick in.
Let's dive into this.
Let's do it. And I think I do want to qualify a lot of my study, because I'm a filmmaker, has been in the film world generally. I think the principles that I'll talk about apply very broadly to all art, but the specific examples I'll be using a lot of film references. So, but yeah, the horror genre I think is a really interesting case study. You know, I'm not going to make a blanket statement that you can't have a good horror movie, right?
Sure,
but
that's what the documentary is for.
At the same time, though, you know, in the modern world, we have this idea of, you know, straight out of the Enlightenment, that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Yeah. That's kind of a major theme that I'm examining and trying to push against in my studies here. But with the horror genre, you know, if somebody's primary form of entertainment, you know, somebody goes home after a long day of work and needs leisure, their primary form of entertainment is watching a bunch of teenagers get, you know, hacked to bits after having sex.
Chainsaws.
You know,
they're beautiful.
I have questions.
Questionable things. Yeah.
I have questions about that, right?
Yeah.
Particularly somebody claiming the name of Christ. It's like, you know, if you delight in that, you're like, oh, I just really need to go watch these horrible, gruesome, you know, vice tourism movies.
Gory stuff.
Yeah. There you go.
Then, you know, I have questions about that, right? But
Yeah, for sure.
you know, in my experience, it's been quite unpopular to kind of say, oh, maybe you as a Christian shouldn't delight in such things, right? So a lot of my studies kind of been governed by that question, and just like how do we make objective statements about art, and what is the room for where is the room for subjective taste in these things?
Right.
When is a taste lawful? When is it okay not to like something that is beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a brief overview. But
there's a couple things I want to touch on. I mean, first off, like what obviously there's many Christians out there who have differing views. I mean, you go straight from like hardcore Presbyterians, only homeschooled, never touch anything outside of like classical music or anything like Bible movie. VeggieTales and that's it, people.
Right.
Did you watch something E-rated? Oh my gosh! You heathen. Yeah. To I mean like the more chill Southern Baptist who's like, hey, I mean everyone would agree that like they're actually, or maybe not Southern Baptist. Let's go SoCal Baptist.
I was wondering where you're going with this.
They're not chill. They're not chill.
I know people who are Southern Baptists. So.
I was thinking, all right, let's go Southern California. SoCal Baptist.
My favorite denomination.
Well, they're beautiful. They're fantastic.
They are.
No, they're far more chill. They're like, okay, hey, some horror movies are great. And there's like, did you guys see the R-rated movie last night? That was amazing. And they're fine with that talking. And we would all come to that table and say, yeah, you're believers. You do that. And it's not like you're blatantly sinning. So there seems to be room. I mean, at the face value, I don't know if there'd be a deeper argument for it, but there seems to be like a face value for subjectivity.
Right. Yeah. And so that's kind of one of the big questions, right? Because on the one hand, right, we do want to say as Christians that God is the source of all goodness in this world, right? And that includes visual things, auditory things like music that is beautiful, and movies that are beautiful, paintings that are beautiful, and just, you know, beauty excites delight in the perceiver, right? And, you know, principally the job of the Christian being faithful in his consumption is to delight in the right things, right? Because we're in a fallen world, and our delights and our affections and our loves are kind of all over the place and disordered. So on the one side, we do want to say that there is an objective standard that can be garnered, understood, and then implemented in the lives of the consumer here. at the same time, that on the other side, there is a lot of room for legalism, and I think I see a lot of legalistic tendencies among this discussion generally, right?
Yeah,
On the one hand, we have the uber protective Christian homeschool mom who's like, I don't want you watching anything above, rated G, right?
I knew it.
Parental guidance. Ooh.
I knew a guy whose mom didn't let him read Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe because it said witch in the title.
Yeah, see, there's that.
That's a derogatory term.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
That is, someone sensitive of the legend Clive Staples Lewis. The audacity of that guy.
The audacity, I know. So there's that extreme.
Right.
And then, her children laugh at her in response and then go watch the most filthy, vile thing in response. Right.
Right.
So,
whoa. Hang on a second.
Yeah. So we have kind of those two extremes, right? Yeah. But I would, and you brought up kind of like the cheesy Bible movie thing, right?
Yeah.
And again,
pure flicks.
Yeah, exactly.
Shots
pure
fired.
flicks.
He said it, not me.
Exactly.
You coughed it.
Sorry, I have something in my throat.
But so the pure flicks kind of genre of things.
Yeah.
I would say actually both sides of that question are evil. Maybe that might be a bit extreme. But if you kind of look at it and what they're both doing, they're both proclaiming a lie about the world.
Sure.
In the case of the super cheesy, sappy Christian film, right? We, often see a super high level of sentimentality. Everybody's super evil. All the atheists are, just the most depraved people you'll meet.
They're just like every other atheist you'll ever meet.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, but then, gospel bomb, nothing really happens other than somebody preaches the gospel and then just everybody's a Christian instantly. Cue the violin as the sun sets, right?
Yeah.
So
that's the gospel. That's the Christian atom bomb.
Yeah. Exactly. So there's that, which, if you think about that for 2 seconds, that's not really how God works.
Yeah.
God uses.
There's usually a lot of tent pegs through heads.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
cutting up of prostitutes.
Yeah. That's a horror movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly it.
That's pretty horrific.
Yeah. Exactly. So there's that and all of the sentimentality that comes along with that.
Yeah.
Which in one sense, who's that one? Thomas Kincaid, right? He's brought up a lot, but he's kind of a perfect example of the squishy sentimentality that I'm talking about, right?
Right.
Hallmark films, right?
Right.
But yeah, on that one side, that's proclaiming a lie about the world, right?
Yeah.
That is telling you that goodness is associated with this super sugary, high emotional reality, right?
Right.
It's Disney.
Yeah, it's appealing to this sense of over the top nostalgia that we have sometimes.
Right.
So there's that on the one side, and it seems that like innocent Christians really tend towards that, right?
Heavily.
Yeah. However, because of that whole thing, it seems that their children and people just pushing back in response to that have jumped across the road into the other ditch, which is just...
This mud is better than your mud.
Exactly. Which it's kind of, I would argue, is at least connected to the same root problem, just manifesting differently.
That's
This other response is just... delighting in grit for grit's sake. This is very Enlightenment thinking. If something's just bad and disgusting, that must be realistic and good.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Somebody, a headshot gets shown on screen. That's realistic and gritty. Right.
Right.
It's that's kind of the same problem. Pastor Doug calls it the pornography of the emotions. Right. So it's kind of like each is just appealing to a kind of weird, subjective, emotional sense of what's going on.
Does it sort of almost check the box of it has to have this in there? And yes, it does.
Yeah, definitely. That's that's definitely an aspect of it. But it seems Christians generally go in one of those two directions.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a problem that I've seen, right? You know, the rebellious children who like this over here, and
Right.
then their sweet mothers who like this on this other
The
side.
sweet dainty mothers.
Yeah. And so
That was a good mom impression.
I threw a little bit of Irish in there.
and so I hope you guys can see now like why this question is so immensely practical, because out of those identifying those things, out of that comes the question of like, well, what should we be watching? Right. How should we be thinking about the movies that we watch and the music we listen to? And
Did you see he pointed at me when he said music? The music we listen to.
Hey, that means go subscribe to Jake Hughes on Spotify.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the shout out.
He is the middle road, people. It's like Billy Graham.
I appeal to moms on both sides of the thing.
So you're just trying to find the middle road. Like, is there a middle road between these two ditches?
Yeah, well, not even just a middle road. Maybe a triangle is a better thing, because it's both of these. Both of these are bad.
Yeah,
and like just essentially, they're not only are they appealing to a certain level of emotion. So I want to find a middle road there. But also, most of the time, they're just really bad art. And that's another question. So we have content, right? And then we also have the form of the thing. So, in the case of the super sappy Christian film, the content is, usually trust in Jesus, everything will be fine, and you will ride off into the sunset. Which that content isn't
That's a
true
nice
or
sentiment.
good.
I mean, there is a gospel story to the Bible, but there's also guys like who God praises who ram a spear through two people who are sinning.
And so that's a question that we'll get to in a second. Where is the place of actual gross stuff? Right.
Gross. Yeah.
So
can we be gross?
but to the point on in those films, the content is not good or true.
Yeah.
And then also usually the form is really poor as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, and this just applies to art across the board. I like to think of different art forms as, you're communicating things via the language of whatever medium you're in. So in the case of music, that might be text painting, or in the case of film, which is my field, the ways in which you cut shots together, the framing of the shots, you're always proclaiming something about your subject. You're communicating stuff to the audience through that.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Color, all these things, how they play together. And generally speaking, say you had a really good content, right? You have a legit gospel message that is really accurate and faithful to the scriptures, right? Not overly sentimental. Even so, I would make the argument that your form ought to reflect the content of the thing. If you are, and this goes, I think, even beyond the bounds of art, right? The form of whatever it is ought to reflect the nature of the thing. So in this case, the form should be beautiful because your story is beautiful, right? The way in which you use the camera to communicate these ideas to your audience should be consistent with how the story is unfolding and what you're actually trying to say.
Sure.
Marvel, get away from the steady cam. Come on.
I'm getting airsick right now.
And so now jumping back to the other side of things, we've seen a big trend. Are you guys familiar with the film studio A24?
I don't think so.
A24. No. So they're kind of an art house film studio that's pretty popular among film buffs, but they have made a lot of films that are really, their form is really excellent, right? Okay. Their directors have mastered the use of the camera, the cuts, the sound design, all these things.
Okay.
And
so
yet
it looks appealing.
It's quite entertaining to watch, and yet at the same time, it's just a sugary pill of cyanide, right? If you actually
a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you actually look at the essence of a lot of these films, the externals are beautiful, and yet the essence of the thing is absolutely wicked, right?
Gross stuff.
And this is why Christians need to be super careful and have an understanding of these things. I can, and I used to be in this boat of just kind of associating too closely the form and content of these things.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah, and so this applies to music as well. I think we see a lot of this kind of weird disconnect in, for example, sometimes in the Romantic period, we had certain composers with a horrible message masked in a very beautiful ornamentation of these things, right? So, but yeah, we can dive into more of that if you want.
I'd be happy to.
You had a question about what is the place of, when is it okay for us
the place
to
for
use?
Driving tent pegs through
when
on film?
how would we do that
on film?
I mean, this might give it more of a concrete grounding. So horror, there seems to be a sort of there's some horror films that are just like, you know what, that's just you've created like Scream. There's just that you're just stabbing people and having,
and that's the plot.
And that's the plot.
There's nothing appealing to it.
Right.
It's just like I feel like watching this, you know.
Yeah, but now, or there's other ones that are like Hereditary.
Yes.
Or The Witch.
Hereditary is A24. I think The Witch is also. Is it, Carter? Yeah, The Witch is also.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are A24 films.
So
okay.
So now you've put me in the mind of cyanide pills coated in sugar now.
That's a common
so now I'm really worried. But there seems to be this sort of like a fantastic message behind that. So okay. Because in the Hereditary, there's the idea of this sort of normal family. They really don't give a crap about anything. They're not spiritual. They're a ho-hum. We don't really care. They've kind of distances. I can't speak, guys.
Try it again.
Let's edit that out.
Okay.
No, we're keeping it in.
They've distanced.
They've distanced themselves.
My word. They've distanced themselves from everything sort of, whether evil or good. They're not attached to anything, and the whole plot of that story is like, if you have not filled yourself with something good, you will be filled.
Sure.
And so that's a fantastic Christian idea.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not, it takes one thing to confess the sin, but it takes another thing to actually fill yourself with the word and study God. So, I mean, that's one side of it. But the other aspect of it is like, I honestly think that, at least in our modern age, the scary wives' tale, the horror story to scare the children, to show, hey, there's an actual threat here.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Like that has totally disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the tent peg through the head? Where is the spear through the two bodies? Where is this sort of, I mean, you read the Bible and you have an actual mind. It's not picture book.
Right.
It's R-rated.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
NC-17 sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like daughters sleeping with dads. Like, whoa, people.
Yeah.
We're talking
We're going
bad.
there.
Totally. I mean, yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of stuff that's
totally
like bad stuff. But and then and we have had just kind of like, hey, you know what? That's not true, good, and beautiful. Because it doesn't look true, good, and beautiful, or it doesn't sound true, good, and beautiful. So therefore, we're going to toss it to the wind.
Yeah.
And it's
fair.
Wait, we've just lost a strong aspect of storytelling and a strong aspect of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where is the actual, hey, there's grit in the world. Yeah. You need to get some and need to learn where to recognize it and where to fight it.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So I think this gets to the, so just the question of where does, the actual evil of the world fit into our storytelling, right?
Right.
Because on a very real level, you don't have a story unless you have an antagonist, right?
Sure.
Whether that's a result of the fall, that's a different debate. But
just watch his documentary and he'll answer that.
Well, no, I won't. But
okay,
honest, we like it.
Yeah, but here I'll draw on the medievals. I think a lot. There's a big idea in medieval philosophy, just this idea of fittingness, right? And on one level, I think, being a good Westminsterian, I have to reject a lot of the fittingness arguments. Good and necessary consequence is what we're about here. But this fittingness thing I think can be really useful for our study of aesthetics, in terms of how art and all these things relate. So, being an artist, what you're doing kind of in your process of creating art, the thing that you are doing is asking yourself kind of subconsciously all the time, is this fitting, right? What you're doing is organizing all of these parts into a greater whole with the hope of having the whole be greater than the part. Right. So in the case of painting, that's every brush stroke. Is this a fitting thing? And again, this is kind of a subconscious process that the artist does. In the case of film, we're writing a screenplay, for example, does the scene fit better here or here? And so in very real ways, in the context of a singular unified project, right, the whatever you include ought to be fitting with the whole, right? And that applies just as much to the grit and just as much to the evil aspects of the story as it does to the good and sappy parts of the story. Like, right, you know, it's not a bad thing to have a wedding at the end of the story, right? But it needs to be fitting in the context of everything else that has come before it, what's going on at the time, and these sorts of things. And all of the context of whatever it is that you're making determines kind of what you're trying to say about it. So the morality of it, what you are proclaiming through the use of this thing. So in the case of grit, right, I think grit and, you know, honestly just gross violence even can be a very useful tool in the hand of the artist. In the case of film, right, if you are trying to proclaim a truth about evil, right, you should depict such things. However, it's kind of a crucial thing to make sure the context is right. So back to the Hereditary thing. His second film, Midsummer, is kind of an inverse, if that makes sense. The film, have you seen Midsummer?
No.
I've
seen parts of it.
Okay, I won't recommend it because I think it's
very disturbing.
Evil. It's kind of evil, just shot through with evil through and through.
Really?
Yeah, but again, it's that form content thing. The form is quite great. I think it was nominated for many cinematography awards, etc. It's like you know, up there. But in terms of essence, what Midsummer kind of is about is just this degradation of this group of friends who goes to a cult in, I think it's Sweden. It's either Sweden or Switzerland. I forget. One of those countries.
They're all the same.
They're all the same.
Tall blonde people.
Exactly.
And we're canceled.
Hey, no, they're white. That means we're okay.
Yeah, but the film ends with her being crowned with flowers as, you know, she watches her boyfriend be burned alive in this cabin, right? Oh, wow. And she is smiling, and there's like this happy music that's going on, and so like through the form, it seems that the director's proclaiming something about what's going on there. So the problem isn't necessarily that somebody's being burned alive in a cabin. The problem is
don't mind that.
But the problem isn't necessarily that in and of itself as such. The problem is what purpose it's serving in the story. Right. It's kind of the climax of victory in this story. You know, where the characters have triumphed, then the movie ends. But that's not to say that in another film you could have somebody being burned alive in a cabin, but you know, the message that you're pointing to is that this is a wicked, evil thing. The character who's doing this is evil. What's going on is, you know, inconsistent with Christianity, and now he's the antagonist or something, right? That could be a good use of such things. But again, it's just back to the idea that, you know, form isn't amoral and is directly tied to kind of what you're talking about. And so I guess just, you know, for the Christian, part of our discernment of these things is really understanding the message of a film. And that comes from understanding the art form itself. So in music, what music you're listening to, what is, you know, chord progressions signify, right? These sorts of things. And, you know, is that true? Is it good? Is it beautiful?
He played a B flat. No.
Run away.
The devil's chord. Tritone.
So ultimately, it really does come down to, like, is this movie lying about the world we live in? Is this movie saying that God is not who he is. The world is not governed by justice. These sorts of things. But yeah.
Yeah. No, come on, man. That 50 Cent is that good.
That seems like a great place to end this episode. Well, Ian, we could talk about this for a really, really long time.
We definitely could.
But it looks like we're getting close to the end time right here. So, Ian, thank you so much for coming on the podcast with us. We really appreciate it. We'll have to have you on again sometime.
Yeah,
part two.
Yeah, what is real quick, what is the name of your film? Have you figured it out?
We have not settled on that yet.
All right, well, this is definitely a reason why
come
we
up with it right now.
Yeah.
No, we should have him on a second time just to figure out the name. Well,
the
and then
aesthetics of tent pegs.
There you go.
It's catchy, right?
Yeah.
No, but we'll definitely look to have you on a second time when that movie's about to come out, and then we can maybe
push it.
We'll talk about it. Yeah.
We'll
talk about it a little more.
That'd be awesome. All right. Well, hey, thanks for coming on the show, and thank you, listeners, for joining us on This Is In the Garden with Gideon Marlatt, Jake Hughes, and our special guest Ian McMillen.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Adios.
Carter, just kidding. I love you.